Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gone Fishin podcast here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. We've got great content coming up, lots of Dolphin stuff coming up. Game 5 for the Miami Heat against the Denver Nuggets tonight as they look to keep their season alive. Panthers tomorrow night in a Game 5, looking to do the same. Both teams down 3-1, but we are both pulling for both of them very heavy. Really good week for the Fish this past week. The Marlins coming in at a scorching 5-1. They sweep the Royals, and they have a couple of really exciting victories against the Chicago White Sox over the weekend. Take 2 out of 3 there. A couple of ninth inning thrillers in that one, and I want to get right into it. The Marlins right now 37-29. Season high 8 games over 500 here as we get into mid-June. We are looking at 3.5 games back of the Braves in the NL East standings for the Marlins and 3 games up on the Brewers for the second wild card spot at the moment. So I'm going to get into it with your Major League Players of the Week. I'm going to go to Jorge Soler, the 2-homer game on Sunday against Chicago. He's come back since fouling that ball off of his thumb in the Kansas City series. Pretty strong here, hitting .462 with a .611 on base, a 1,000 slugging percentage, a 1611 OPS. And for your pitcher of the week, I'm going to say pitchers of the week. I'm going to go give it to the entire starting staff. They went through a full turn of the rotation, and they delivered 5 consecutive gems. I'm talking 5 starts in a row, 1 or less earned run allowed, 29 in the third innings, 4 earned runs, a 1.23 ERA for the staff over their last few turns of the rotation, and that includes Sandy Alcantara. That'll be one of my themes for the for this podcast here, is the starters starting to kind of come together and what that could mean for the team going forward. But before I do that, I do want to shout out the minor league players of the week. I'm going to give it to our old friend Jose Devers down at AA Pensacola on just an absolute massive tear right now. 647 batting average, 684 on base, 1177 slugging for an 1861 OPS over his last 5 games. He's homered 3 times in his last 5 games and driven in 6. And I'm going to give it to a pair of pitchers at the AA level. Patrick Monteverdi in his last start, 6 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts. And Evan Fitterer also at AA. Nice little combo brewing there. Fitterer, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 9 strikeouts of his own. But I do want to get into kind of what we saw over the last week and overall some of the news that's coming around this team. And a lot of it has to do with the starting pitching. Obviously, we know Trevor Rogers recently was pulled out of his rehab start while he was warming up. Felt a little bit of discomfort in his non-throwing shoulder. Still waiting to see as to how serious or not serious that is at the moment. All indications seem like he should be fine moving forward. He might make another rehab start at AAA Jacksonville later on this week before replacing likely Yuri Perez in the rotation. That was a piece of news that came out this week, is that the Marlins would prefer to put him on pause and kind of cap his innings somewhere between 100 to 115 innings. Shout out to Craig Mish for that information. And Yuri right now is at about 60 overall. So he's at about 50 right now. So he's got 60 to 65 innings remaining. That's 12 or 13 starts. If they keep him on this same 5 innings per start kind of leash, maybe down the stretch they decide to make him a reliever for the stretch run, if there is a stretch run to be had this year. But it looks like they're going to put him on some sort of pause program where he's pitching at a little bit less frequently in AAA until they're ready to call him back up, possibly early to mid-August at this point. And the Marlins have a couple of different options there as to what to do. The most obvious being Trevor Rogers at the moment. I think it's still expected that he comes back probably after the Seattle series and slots into Yuri's place in the rotation. Johnny Cueto made a rehab start in Pensacola just yesterday. Pitched 2 2/3 uh, shutout innings. So he might be a guy to try to shoehorn into the rotation. The Marlins, all of a sudden, they're getting healthy, and it's kind of one of those things where you're looking up and down the roster right now, and you're like, okay, well, who do you want to send down? And unfortunately, Yuri's probably the obvious answer at the moment, just because of the fact that he is so constrained in terms of his inning limitations. But even then, there's more guys you'd have to send down if you're going to bring up Cueto as well as Rogers, and what the roles for those guys would be moving forward, because of the fact that outside of Yuri, the other 4 starters in the rotation are doing their job. Braxton Garrett hasn't done anything to lose his spot in the rotation at the moment. And I think Johnny Cueto is going to have to earn his spot back. Rogers, same thing. I don't think his spot should be just given to him. I think if he struggles 1 or 2 times out, then maybe give Cueto that opportunity. And vice versa, depending on who comes back into the fold first. But these are good problems for the Marlins to have, because of the fact that their starting pitching is starting to kind of recover after a rocky start in April, May. Sandy had a couple of really good starts in a row. Even the Oakland start, really, all of his problems were just in that 3rd inning. He went 7 innings. He's gone 7 innings in each of his last 2 starts. Looked a lot more like himself against Chicago, going 7 innings, allowing just the 1 run. Jesus Luzardo went 7 innings, allowed just 1 run in his last start. Braxton Garrett has been great. His start on Sunday, 5 1/3 innings, 9 punch outs. Edward Cabrera, I am a little bit worried about the blisters. That's the 2nd time now in 3 starts. You wonder if maybe he doesn't make his next turn in the rotation, although I don't think there's any indication of that. But you do wonder about what the effects are going to be, going forward as we get deeper into the summer here. And how are they going to avoid him, developing these blisters? Is there a different grip that needs to be worked out, or what? How often he uses the rosin bag? I'm not quite sure the mechanics of that and how to prevent those blisters for Cabrera. But I do think that's something that they're going to have to look at here, because blisters are one of those things that they can really, really derail a guy, over the course of a couple of months. They're just nagging and annoying. And I think that's something that Cabrera is going to have to deal with, if he's going to continue to be a staple in this rotation. And he's pitched really well over his last few starts. Obviously, he went only the 5 innings against Kansas City, and he could have gone much longer, only 65 pitches through those 5 innings. But again, the blisters got to him. The great start against Oakland, 6 innings, 10 punch outs. So he's a guy that I'm looking forward to kind of, come on, we got to get through these starts, Eddie. He's a powerfully built guy. He's a guy that's built to go 6, 7, 8 innings if you need him to. And it's just a matter of reining in some of those blister issues, especially with Rogers and Cueto coming back. Maybe Cabrera's a guy that misses some time due to blisters. Maybe Brian Hoeing gets sent down. But these are all really good problems to have. As I mentioned, everybody in their last time through the rotation pitched really well, and you've got more rotation help coming. And that kind of leads you into, well, boy, do we consider trading some of this extra depth? And I know that you never want to trade controllable starting pitching, but when you're looking at right now, counting Yuri, you've got 5 in the rotation that you trust. And then you've got Trevor Rogers, that's 6. You've got Johnny Cueto, that's 7. I hesitate to count Cueto because of the fact that he's been injured all year long, and a bicep injury at his age, I do wonder as to how effective he can be when he comes back. But he's an option. That's 7. You've got Brian Hoeing. That's 8. And so, even Devin Smeltzer's made a start at the big league level. Daniel Castano. They've got 10 guys. They've got 7 guys that they trust to be in the rotation on an everyday basis, and they've got 3 guys that can make a spot start for you in a pinch, or fill in for a handful of starts. And so you look around at, okay, well, do you start canvassing the league and seeing if, hey, maybe there's some upgrades that we can make at third base, or at shortstop, or at even first base or catcher, and can we leverage some of our pitching depth to do this? And I know that that's something that's risky because of the fact that guys get hurt, and we've seen it. Trevor Rogers got hurt. Max Meyer last year, shortly after his call up, blew out his elbow. It's just one of those things that can happen, and it's a risk that I think the Marlins will weigh as they kind of canvass the trade market. The next thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was AJ Puk coming back. AJ Puk has not missed a beat. AJ Puk is still AJ Puk. But I think that the bullpen is starting to take on. There are some concerns that are starting to emerge out of the bullpen, especially with Matt Barnes going on the IL now. And I think that your right-handed pitching out of the bullpen all of a sudden is a little bit of a concern, because you look at the bullpen and who's in it. You're looking at AJ Puk, you're looking at Andrew Nardi, you're looking at Stephen Okert, Tanner Scott, who's having a career year in the bullpen right now. And then you look at, your righties, and it's Huascar Brazaban, who started off really, really well this year, but has been getting kind of lit up in his last few outings. Dylan Floro, who blew the game on Friday night in Chicago. He hasn't been himself in the last few weeks. Then you're looking at Brian Hoeing and Matt Barnes, but he's obviously not healthy at the moment. JT Chargois, who on Sunday gave up a few runs out of the bullpen. So all of a sudden, the bullpen's looking kind of lopsided. You've got really, really good left-handed options, but right now your right-handed options at the moment, Brian Hoeing might be the best of the bunch, which isn't necessarily what you want at the moment. Obviously, you hope Floro and Chargois can kind of turn it around, and I think that those guys will. Brazaban, it's a little bit harder to tell just because he's got a little bit less of a track record at the big league level to see what's going to happen there. But this is a team that's 8 games over 500 right now. So any issues that you're looking at, whether it's third base and Jean Segura, and I want to just touch on him, and it feels like, Segura's had a really, really rough go of it recently. But you're starting to see the turnaround, I think, and I think it will be a gradual turnaround with Gene. You look at the strikeout rate, and is it in line with what he's been doing everywhere else in his career? And it is. He only strikes out about 15% of the time. The batting average on balls in play has been really low, which points to maybe a little bit of bad luck. The exit velocity is down, so he's not hitting the ball quite as hard as he's accustomed to. But he smoked a couple of balls in Chicago, the double in the 9th inning on Saturday, and the home run in the 9th inning on Sunday. And that's another thing. Segura's got some clutch hits in there. He hit the walk-off a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember who it was against, but there was a walk-off a couple of weeks ago that Segura had. He hits the double on Saturday, hits the home run on Sunday. So you hope that he's starting to turn things around a little bit. But overall, as a team, this team is just, you start to, the one run thing I think is a little overplayed, and I think it's almost discrediting of this team, because you look at the run differential and you look at it and it's negative. It's still in the negatives. It's starting to reverse that trend, but it's still in the negatives. And I think a lot of people use the 1-run game statistic as something as they believe that something is unsustainable. And I really want to dive into that and see kind of how sustainable this is for the Marlins. So let's kind of piece it down and look at overall. Okay, well, what constitutes a team that wins close games? And I think you're looking at the first thing is clutch hitting. The Marlins now they're not particularly great when it comes to um, hitting with guys in scoring position, but they have gotten a lot better with that. But what I want to point to is this is a team that doesn't really strike out all that often compared to years past. Right now, they're ninth fewest in strikeouts by team in Major League Baseball, fifth fewest in the National League. And what that points to is that points to a club that's really that puts the ball in play, that emphasizes putting the ball in play. That when you do have a runner on third with less than 2 outs, more than likely you know that the ball is going to be put in play. The run's going to come in. That's typified by guys like Luis Ariz, Brian De La Cruz with his newfound approach, Joey Wendell, who's been coming on lately, Jonathan Davis puts the ball in play. Like the Marlins have a lineup full of nuisances, and it's tied together by guys like Luis Ariz and Jorge Soler, who's been on a tear of his own lately, been on a tear all year. Might be making a real push for an all-star appearance for him. But so you look at the clutch hitting, and that's a check right now. This team does not strike out a lot, so they're pesky, they're annoying. The starting pitching has to keep you close in a game. You know, if you're not scoring, your starters need to be stopping the other team from scoring, keeping it a 1-2 run game at the most, and they've been doing that. And then the next thing that comes there is your bullpen. Is your bullpen carrying the baton for the starters and keeping the game close until you get to those late innings, until, you know, maybe that starter that's been dominating your lineup is out of the game and you've got some new pitchers to face that you can get something going against. And the bullpen's been doing that. Even with the slip-ups of guys like Floro and Brazoban and Chargois lately, the bullpen, for the most part, has still been one of the major strengths of this team overall, just off of the strength of the lefties, pretty much. Brian Hoeing pitched a scoreless eighth yesterday in the game, which I think is very interesting. Maybe that's a role for him, that they're willing to let him go kind of into more high leverage spots. You know, they were trailing by only 2 runs in that 8th inning, so I don't think it was a situation where they're throwing Brian Hoeing out there as kind of a red flag or as a white flag. So I think that you look at the starting pitching, the bullpen, the clutch hitting that's starting to come together for this team, and guys that are starting to come around. You know, Joey Wendell starting to come around. You hope Segura is starting to come around. Jazz is going to be back within a week or two. He's been seen without the brace on the foot, doing workouts. He's back to baseball activities. So it's really only a matter of time there before he's back in the lineup and hopefully providing even more of a punch for this team. But the Marlins right now sitting at 37-29. It's a very exciting time for South Florida sports. Just as a whole, this team here, they look different. This looks like a different Marlins team than what we've seen in years past. I really like the mix of starting pitching that they're getting right now. The bullpen is pitching as well as I can remember any Marlins bullpen pitching, and the lineup is really doing just enough at the moment. And there's reinforcements on the way. So at the moment, there's a ton to be positive about here. You're looking at 3 against Seattle upcoming, and then you're looking at 3 against Washington. So the Marlins again continue to be in position for them to make hay in the standings, to continue to try to gain on the Braves and create separation between themselves, the Mets, the Phillies, and the other wild card teams that are on the road there. And before we go, I do want to leave you guys with a prize picks of the day, or with a prize picks pick of the day. I'm going to hit the under on Bryce Miller outs recorded. His number is 17.5 right now. He's allowed 15 earned runs in his last 2 starts after his red hot start to the season for the Mariners rookie. And facing this Marlins team right now, I think the Marlins are going to do enough to knock him out of the game. And on top of that, he's averaged about 80 to 85 pitches per outing. He's gone over 100 once, but I think they want to keep him between 80 and 90 pitches. So I think that the Marlins, with the way that they work counts, force him to go maybe 5 innings instead of a full 6 this time out, and record about 15 outs for the day. So that is all we have today for the Gone Fishing show here. We will be back next week, Monday afternoon, bright and early. Not that early, but midday, bright and midday. And we look forward to seeing more of this. It's going to be a very exciting season, very exciting summer stretch. You know, the doldrums of July and August, hopefully this year, are ignited with some trade talk as the Marlins look to be potentially even buyers at the deadline this year. 8 games over 500, lots of fun stuff. We'll be there covering it all for you. And thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time. Later.